move on to our e-commerce panel, and we have some really interesting people on board. But let me tell you a little about the panel first. As more and more consumers shift towards e-commerce, what does the sector need to do to ensure that they keep preferring it over brick and mortar stores? Our panel of experts look at the current trends and what more you and I can expect. Let's welcome on this panel Amneh, who's going to be our moderator, Raza Matin, Abrar, Mina, Salman, Dawood, Romana, Abdullah, who will be joining Amneh right here, right now.
Hi everyone and assalamu alaikum. My name is Amneh Faruqi and I'm one of the co-founders of Pauline and the Stories. I work in what is known as the inclusive creative economy. It's not a term I came up with, by the way, it's what the UN calls it. But I'm so very excited to be here today as part of this super cool digital event by the Nest.io. I look forward to the conversations that disrupt every year, and I'm so excited that COVID has only seen this incredible team come out much stronger than ever. So without much further ado, a big thank you to everyone who's tuning in to hear this on a weekend. We really appreciate you being here, and a big thank you to everyone on the panel for taking the time to talk to everybody here today about how e-commerce is changing the way we both understand retail and how we shop today. I could introduce all of you, but that would be a lot of me talking, and I'm sure the audience is actually very keen to hear from all of you. So if it's okay with the panelists, I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourselves, just say a little bit about yourselves, perhaps where you're placed. Romana, if you're happy to go first.
Hi, delighted to be part of this panel. I'm Romana Abdullah. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hopscotch, which is a kids clothing brand that we started in 2014. We work in the entire value chain of kidswear, so we do our own designing, contract manufacturing, and distribution. We currently have 32 stores across Pakistan, and we consider ourselves e-commerce forward also, so playing the e-commerce game very aggressively. And hopefully continue to grow and deliver great kidswear to the Pakistani middle class and upper middle class.
Amazing. As a mother, I've obviously sampled your products and we're fans. Raza, if I can ask you to go next.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Raza, and I am the founding CEO of Brandverse. Brandverse is a e-commerce enablement company that helps enterprises of all sizes go online. So we specialize in product content and product cataloging, and we work with brands like Cardi, Alkaram, AK Galleria, Carrefour, Metro, etc. But we also work with platforms like Panda, Airlift, Bikea, Cheetah, in enabling sort of things like e-commerce for them. And we're entering the third sort of line of our business, which is now using that same data set to enable SMEs of all sizes, particularly micro SMEs, come online.
Fantastic and super important work. I can't think of a year like 2020 where that was needed more. Abrar, so lovely to see you as always. Can you tell us a little bit, just for the audience? I know all the amazing work you do.
Thank you very much, Amneh. It's a pleasure to be here. I work for HBL, and we in HBL essentially work with the e-commerce industry in multiple manners. We enable the internet payment gateway, so that we enable the payments through the internet payment gateways. We also enable access to the e-commerce entities to HBL customers through the HBL mobile app by integrating them into the HBL app. And we are also now very aggressively focusing towards enabling the agri-supply chain via the e-commerce structures. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to having this conversation today.
Amazing. So Mina, congratulations first on raising investment this year. Very exciting. Can you tell everybody here a little bit about yourself and your business?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Mina Salman and I am the co-founder of baggallery.com. It's an online platform where we sell basically all home fashion, beauty, a lot of beauty actually, and fashion products. So we started off as a Facebook page around 2015, and it was 2017 when we actually realized the importance of imported products and a lot of fashion brands and a lot of beauty products. There is a lot of market out there. So we launched our platform in 2017, and then we started developing it more, and we started working with a lot of international brands also, because me and my husband, we together launched this platform, and we're based in Middle East, but we always wanted to do something for people back home. So yes, and then actually, it was actually, I really wanted to say something, that it was last year, because we've been away from Pakistan for like more than a decade. So we got to know about the 0 to 1 last year only, and my husband, he attended this with like our team members, and we attended this, and actually it was through this conference that we got to meet our investors, and rest everybody knows what happened. And I'm so happy that I'm here, like within a year I'm here, joining all of you as a panelist and talking about my e-commerce and bag gallery, and how we have evolved over a period of time, and what our plans and how to take it forward.
Well, that's amazing, and I'm not surprised. Disrupt is definitely in place in the ecosystem where you meet everybody. And finally, last but not least, Adam, welcome to the panel, and can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thank you. So I've been running e-commerce companies and product for e-commerce companies for the last 8 years in Pakistan, and currently using all of that sort of experience and the issues I've sort of faced myself, we have created a e-commerce platform for universal checkouts, where we basically help e-commerce companies get much higher conversion rates and basically push customers towards prepayment as well.
Absolutely amazing. So yeah, I'm excited. There's so much to talk about in just an hour. So I just thought we could kick off with just generally looking at, the e-commerce ecosystem as a whole. E-commerce has famously been called the first truly scalable global retail model. And I think that is probably the most perfect description for it. And obviously with COVID-19, we've seen accelerated digital commerce adoption in Pakistan, definitely much beyond pre-lockdown levels. I remember back in 2017, there was a report on Pakistani e-commerce which had predicted that e-commerce in 2020 would be valued in Pakistan at $1 billion. And as we see from the results of the first e-commerce index, which was released in April 2020 this year, we've definitely come a very, very long way. But despite like super intense mobile penetration, which is I think 172 million people who have a device, maybe more, e-commerce has remained relatively unexploited. So I'm just curious to know, like, how do you feel businesses in Pakistan were positioned for the digital world before the current crisis? And how well do you think the sector, or perhaps you want to talk about your own business, has met the challenge of the accelerating demand both during the lockdown and beyond? Mina, if you could maybe like to talk a little bit about the bag gallery example.
Yes, definitely. I think somehow all the brands were getting ready for the e-commerce thing, but with the help of COVID, like COVID didn't tell anyone. It just came, and we all have to, like, we had to adapt. There was no other way. So I think the process, which was, going to happen around 2 years down the road, it just happened within 10 months, and we all quickly adapted to it, and we found our ways. And I think it's a beautiful way. I think Pakistan was little behind the rest of the country, because I keep on comparing Pakistan with what is happening internationally. So we were like little behind, but I think Pakistan is now catching up on e-commerce, and it has really changed a lot of things. Initially, like first 2 weeks for us also was very difficult, because lockdown, we couldn't move, like everybody was home. But then with the help of easing up of when lockdown got little ease up, especially for the e-commerce, like you can order food and things like that. So we actually started to move around. And then yes, for us, unfortunately and fortunately, I'm sure COVID has given a lot of like disruptions, and it has really done a lot of things, but eventually for the e-commerce business, I think it gave us a lot of learning also, and our growth, we accelerated a lot, something which we're expecting that it will happen like in 10 months, but for us it just happened. And a lot of people, I think, they felt comfortable when they were ordering online. And there are a lot of sectors, especially beauty sector. The beauty industry is one of the most highest growing industry worldwide, and especially the skincare industry has been really really resilient, because everybody, when we were home, we didn't know, we got some time for ourselves, and we started looking into self care. So this industry actually started picking up a lot. And yes, I think COVID has really helped us, in understanding how to shop online and e-commerce, and how to adapt ourselves to it. Yeah.
Raza, you work with so many businesses. I mean, really, truly across the spectrum, I would say, based on what you described earlier. What do you think are the success factors for traditional businesses coming online over the last 2 years, or if you want to talk about COVID as well?
So I've got a couple of thoughts on the subject. I think the first thought is that COVID was a lost opportunity for e-commerce in Pakistan, primarily because we weren't ready as businesses. And that's because up to this point, we had been big brands, small retailers. We'd always considered e-commerce as a alternative delivery channel, a sort of a little bit of a business distraction in terms of the board priorities. But then COVID hit, and we realized that we were a very long way from where we needed to be in order to really take advantage of this sort of moment. And I think where we really struggled as a collective group was that we realized that we hadn't invested enough in our e-commerce channels. We hadn't thought enough about the experience from a end consumer perspective, and certainly our processes were not resilient enough. So in many ways, I think, yes, whilst the attention has 10x on e-commerce as a result of COVID, we really haven't taken as much of an opportunity, because this was one of those moments where if you were really prepared, everyone would be raving about the convenience of e-commerce. Instead, what you're finding now is as people try e-commerce more, the number of complaints and the number of problems that are cited, those are actually increasing. So a bit of a lost opportunity there. And I think that's because of a little bit of short-sightedness on the part of a lot of our business leaders. In terms of the trend that you sort of see, I would say that, yes, we will continue to double down on e-commerce. People will begin to take it seriously, but I think what will happen is that we'll lull ourselves into a sense of complacency soon enough, where we'll go back to our old ways as soon as we're allowed to. But that has serious implications for the industry and also our competitiveness as a nation, globally. So I'm hoping, in a very perverse way, that this pressure remains on businesses, and we're forced to develop those muscles and that understanding around e-commerce, so that we truly get to a place where the e-commerce experience in Pakistan rivals that of e-commerce experiences elsewhere in the world. Right now, I can clearly tell you, we are very, very, very far behind. And there's plenty of room to grow, though.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Two sides to that same coin. So Romana, I mean, you obviously you have a strong brick and mortar model, and but you've seen. I mean, honestly, I was shopping online. I've actually never stepped into one of your brick and mortar stores, so I'm probably an unusual customer. But what do you think are the most important trends that businesses like yours should take into account for their digital commerce going forward, say 2021?
Well, we all experienced multiples of growth in e-commerce this year, which is terrific for the industry and for e-commerce. And I expect that's going to just, it's here to stay, right? E-commerce is very addictive. The minute you realize how easy it is to place an order, that's it. Like, I think it sort of, is a death nail in the bricks and mortar industry over the long term.
add to cart?
I do think that bricks and mortar is still here to stay. And the reason I say that is that during the lockdown, we saw phenomenal growth in e-commerce. The minute COVID subsided a little bit and shops reopened for Eid, etc., the bricks and mortar sort of stores, they came back with a bang. So I think bricks and mortar, sure, is here to stay. It will take a long time for it to fall off the way it has in the US. Having said that, e-commerce will continue to grow immensely strongly. I think it's for us, and what we see going forward for 2021 is it's about getting the right inventory. What happened in COVID was that a lot of bigger brands weren't prepared, and the stocks was distributed either in stores or stuck in factories that had to shut down. And so a lot of demand was not catered to. And I think this is one big learning. We need to plan for the growth of e-commerce that is to come and sort out the inventory issues as well as the operational issues. So, how do you dispatch, multiple times of what you were dispatching pre-COVID? And how do you do it in an efficient manner so that the customer gets the right product at the right time seamlessly so that they come back again? And I think that's where there were a lot of challenges, especially in the early COVID months, because businesses, as Raza also mentioned, weren't geared to operationalize so seamlessly on e-commerce. And I think that's going to be an area that we all continue to invest in for 2021. I'm very bullish on the e-commerce sector, and we really are doubling and tripling down on it.
Well, that's good news for parents across Pakistan then. Abrar Saab, what do you think all of these changes and everything that we've heard so far, what does it mean for the fintech industry?
I think what we've been hearing constantly is that the whole e-commerce sector is going through a major transformation. Everybody sees the opportunity, and hence there are people trying to create different products, different solutions, and trying to come up with different, either payment solutions or some form of escrow arrangements. People keep talking about in a manner to find something that will enable to create more confidence, more trust at the consumer level, because today I think one of the bigger challenges that you keep hearing when you talk to the e-commerce entities is because of the trust related issues, people are not willing to pay upfront. So I think that is one area that fintechs can, and in both the payments industries, either the formal sector or the new fintechs that are coming in, can work together to try and come up and find some solutions for. But to be honest, based on what we just heard from Raza and Romana as well, I think that the real challenge that still will remain for us is having the e-commerce entities that are ready to scale up, that are enabled to scale up, that have their processes figured out, which are designed in a more customer-centric manner, which are designed in a more customer-friendly way. Similarly, it's not just about putting up a good storefront up there. It's also about having the right kind of supply chain that is scalable. It's having the right kind of logistics partners and the logistics capability that is also equally scalable. It's about having the right kind of awareness for your customers. It's about having the right kind of payment options for your customers. So it's a combination of a lot of these things that will need to go hand in hand. And one other thing I think where I see the opportunity for the fintechs is to come in. We are all trying to emulate to a large extent the success of what happened in the developed markets in the West. But I think we've got our own unique market, our own unique environment, our own unique social challenges. So, for example, I don't see any e-commerce entities trying to go out and solve for a problem for a shop in Jodia Bazaar, in Bori Bazaar, in Zainab Market, trying to get onto an e-commerce or to scale up. We're all very focused, niche, luxury market, luxury space, but that's a very small market in Pakistan. So the mass market where people have some other issues which are not the most likely issues for people in the West, but those issues are not being addressed. So I think it's a combination of new business models, new payment solutions, new ways of creating more confidence in the e-commerce solutions and services that the fintechs, the e-commerce entities, and multiple other stakeholders in this whole supply chain will come together with, and they will evolve hopefully during 2021, and 2021 end will be much better than where we are today.
So amen to that. So Adam, so much is happening, as Abrar Saab said, in your corner of the ecosystem. It's essentially imploded. So how do you think the payment ecosystem is evolving to complement the growing needs of e-commerce? And what do you think the key challenges are for you right now?
So if you look at cash on delivery is obviously the largest sort of payment method in Pakistan right now. 80-90% of orders are with cash on delivery, and according to the state banks, and this is part of my experience as well, about 60% of the volume of the orders are in cash on delivery as well. If you look at it in Pakistan today, there's only about until July, there were only about 1,700 merchants who had a prepayment account with one of the internet payment gateways, and there's a lot of duplication there as well. So larger companies will have 3, 4, 5 accounts. So if we look from the payment side of things, what we really need to do is, e-commerce companies need to be able to be connected to a payment gateway very, very quickly. And there's multiple parts to that. So the first part is onboarding. And the State Bank has released rules over here where digital onboarding is sort of now possible. And that will help sort of improve the entire process of how you bring on a merchant or a builder. Because before, what you had to do was there was a lot of paperwork back and forth and everything like that. So now that will make it a little bit easier. The second part is the technology sort of implementation, because when you're installing a payment gateway, you have to sort of do it very carefully as well. You don't want to sort of have issues during it, because there could be major financial repercussions to it as well. So, these are areas that need to be focused on. And I think by focusing on these things, not only are the banks and the fintech sort of focusing on these areas, but we can actually help e-commerce grow much, much faster. Because while cash on delivery, I believe there's a lot of good with it as well, we do need to give customers the choice as well to do prepayment in any way they see fit. And having that choice is critical.
Absolutely. And I think concerns around how sanitary cash is definitely saw a slight surge in people being at least willing to experiment and try out digital solution that they had not considered before. So when you look at like e-commerce globally, demography, culture, technology, as we've just talked about, these are all important contributors to some of the big questions that businesses are grappling with today. So I guess I know, Raza, what you had to say, but do you think that it's not? But I'm just wondering what everybody else feels. That do you think the current digital consumer behaviors can turn into long-term consistent patterns, or are these just short-term trends? And what can we do to influence the change? Because Romana, you talked about how this is coming and how you're bullish on it. So maybe you'd like to talk about how do you think we can support the consumer journey through the sort of to the 21st century in some ways?
Well, I think we've talked a little bit about ease of use, right? So the website needs to be user-friendly, it should be intuitive, the sort of the customer onboarding to customer fruition needs to be seamless. But I do believe that there is a huge education component that still needs to come in. And historically, that's what you've seen around the world, right? The reason e-commerce companies, the big ones, have burned through billions of dollars of cash is because they've really gone out and educated the customer and tantalized the customer to try, an e-commerce option at least once, because then they know the customer gets hooked. That's what we need to do here. We do need to spend a lot of money on advertising and training the customer and educating the customer. which is, I guess, happening, but hasn't happened enough, I feel, historically, just because we don't have enough venture capital funded companies. We also need to provide every other channel that links with e-commerce in terms of communication, right? So WhatsApp, Instagram, any and every way a customer is comfortable placing orders and interacting with sort of customer service staff. And I feel enough work has not happened on that aspect either. You really need to hold hands with the customers and sort of take them through this journey. And I think a lot more work on that will have to happen.
Absolutely agree in terms of consumer education. And Raza, I'd be interested to hear which businesses, because you said that we're experiencing, for the most part, a temporary peak. Which businesses do you think are going to survive that peak and just move online for good?
I think it's very clear to me the future of restaurants is cloudy at best. Food, dining in, takeaway. I think delivery is going to see a sustained boom. Fashion is very questionable. I think what we've seen is just like Romana mentioned, as soon as stores open, everyone rushed back. And as far as sort of FMCG, grocery retail, et cetera, and whatnot, I think there's just such a long way to go in terms of improving the user experience that I don't think we're going to see a sustained sort of push in that direction, although I think we've been able to bring a lot more customers in the fold. Just want to add a couple of things to what some of the sort of panelists have already added. One is retail truly isn't going anywhere. I think today, as a percentage of global retail, e-commerce is about 17 to 18%. By 2023, it's expected to be about 23, 22%. That does leave, massive amount, 77% of global retail that will still be flowing through brick and mortar. I think it would be, naive of us to assume that retail is just going to continue being the same and that retail itself doesn't need to evolve. I also believe that it's sort of short-sighted to make it a versus conversation, e-commerce versus retail. I think increasingly we're going to this online to offline journey where we're going to see sort of hybrid retail come about, where your offline retailers are also selling online, et cetera. And that's going to sort of, we're definitely move a lot more towards that direction in the next little bit. I think the other thing that Romana talked about was experience, right? And the fact that experience has a long way to go. And I think, we talk about why isn't e-commerce going further or faster in Pakistan, right? And the question we should really ask ourselves as people who are stakeholders in the e-commerce business in Pakistan is, why should it, right? What are we doing as the purveyors of e-commerce, as the enablers of e-commerce, to actually encourage people to use it? Or are we offering what is effectively a substandard purchasing experience relative to what people can get offline? Has finally one retailer or e-tailer in Pakistan that has truly figured out returns, right? Because it's also it's a thing that happens a lot of times. But we think about success journeys, but we don't think about failure journeys. And if you really want to lose a customer, make it very difficult for them to get their money back or exchange a product or return a product. That's when you'll actually lose it. And Adam has plenty of sort of insight on how to sort of deal with this sort of stuff. And the fact that this is what becomes that core, that experience, right? So still lots to do.
No, that's absolutely valid. I think returns are kind of the nemesis in the system. There's a question from somebody who's Rahil is asking, are banks in Pakistan willing to partner with e-commerce players? For instance, Noon partnered with Mashreq and Union Bank partnered with Lazada to resolve a payment issue and build trust. I'm guessing the answer to that is yes, but Abrar, maybe you want to take this one?
Like you said, theoretically speaking, the answer would be yes. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the business model that the gentleman here is talking about, so I can't exactly answer to that specific business model. But conceptually, obviously we are in this payments business. We work with the e-commerce industry today in terms of enabling the payments, enabling them to accept payments. We work with the supply chain to enable them to process payments at a faster pace. So that's our business. That's what we do. So I'm happy to take a follow-up question if there is a specific explanation on what the gentleman has in his mind.
Actually, I've got a question for Abrar.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I'm not into being hijacked here.
That's all right.
I know this is something that plagues a lot of e-commerce merchants, so maybe this is something you can shed light on. We make it relatively easy to pay online when and where that is possible, right? And I think there's a great deal of security that the banks have brought to that with the OTPs, the 3DS, et cetera, and whatnot. But why is it so difficult to process refunds, and why do refunds take so long in Pakistan on credit cards? Because this is a pain point you hear a lot from consumers these days.
I'm invested in this answer. Thank you, Raza.
Okay, so the refunds are typically, obviously, we're just a party that is enabling refunds to the merchants. So, for example, the payment gateways that we provide, we enable the merchants if obviously they are willing to provide the right kind of security to give them the ability to process refunds as soon as they want. So they can process the refunds on their own. It's just that since the market is not so mature, it's just that the e-commerce players are not that mature at this point. There is not a lot of merchants who have been given this right by us to process refunds on their own. So typically the request comes to us and then we process the refund for them. So there is a slight gap in there. But having said that, there are a couple of large merchants to whom this right has been given and they have the ability to go out and process the refund right away.
There is another question about how e-commerce is addressing the consumer behavior cash on delivery. I think we kind of talked about it, so maybe we'll address it as part of an overall conversation. But one of the things that I've kind of been grappling with during the crisis, and I'd be really interested to hear what the panel has to say, is kind of the ethical dilemmas in the delivery chain. I mean, I know Pakistan is not a super mindful shopping economy just yet, but there are some consumers who are interested in the impact on and the risk to delivery riders, particularly during essentially a pandemic where they're exposed to COVID. So what do you think about that? We're talking about that, that sudden and accelerated expansion. What sort of protection measures or education is needed to ensure that as we are developing these business models, we're developing them in ways that are safe, not just at the consumer end, but also for people who are involved in supply chains? Anybody can take the question.
I'm happy to take this question.
Great.
I think it boils down to, again, the corporate entity taking their social responsibilities seriously, because at the end of the day, if you are working for an entity and that entity is asking you to go out and expose yourself to some risks, as if you're working in a factory, the factory owners, they go out and they are responsible to providing you with the right kind of protective care. So similarly, when you go out and you do any high risk jobs, I think it's the corporate's responsibility to take care of their staff, to take care of creating more awareness, to restrict them from exposing themselves unnecessarily to high risk environments. And if that means compromising on the business volume, so be it. So I think it boils down to the corporate entities taking their responsibilities seriously, creating awareness, educating their staff, and equipping them well enough to go out and deal with the challenges as they go out into the open, especially in these difficult times.
I may add.
Yeah, of course.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things when you start to scale. So you talked about the delivery experience. When you start to scale, a lot of things will happen. So just yesterday, I heard of one experience where a courier was basically delivering an item. They left it at their local hub. Then one of the juniors in the sort of hub basically took a photocopy of the airway bill, put that photocopy on another flyer, which was just packed with something random, delivered it to the customer, and the customers obviously had a horrible experience, and it's basic fraud over there. Now, these kind of experiences when you're scaling, so, whether it's you're doing 10 orders, 100 orders, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 orders a day, these issues will happen when you scale. And one of the points that Raza mentioned very clearly was, you have to prepare for those failure events, because the success part is very easy. The success flow, the happy flow as it's called, is very easy. But then when, say, refunds or issues like this come up, those 1, 2, 3, 5% times issues come up, you have to have a process for how you deal with that. And the failure comes in because a lot of time these processes are not defined, their escalation levels aren't defined, and that's what happens. And you have to build these things as you scale.
I think there should be some laws also, especially when it comes to cyber crimes. I think when we talk about ethical side, it should be from not only from the brand side, it should be from the customer sides. And I think when we talk about ethics, we really need to educate our people how to. I mean, like with us, a lot of times has happened that we have delivered the order, and a lot of time, the lady, she will just like the gun she will get her package, and then she will make her guard, the guard will put his gun on the on the rider, poor rider, he's just standing there, and she will open it, she will not like it, she will not pay, and she will just return it back. So I think we really have a long way to go, especially when we talk about ethics, and we really need to educate. And I think from government side also, because since e-commerce is getting bigger every day, it's a very, very scalable industry, and I think it has given a lot of employment opportunities to a lot of people, like people can work from home. So I think there should be some rules and regulations and laws, so that it should be protected from both the sides.
Wow, I hope that's anomaly, that example that you described, it certainly should not be the norm. No, I agree. I think there's a lot of, it's an interesting time to be in e-commerce, because there's so much that's new and there's so much that's coming up. And talking about what the future might look like, and I think, Mina, I'd be interested to hear from you, because you went from being a Facebook-based business to then an e-commerce entity, right? So currently, for most businesses, the product page is our playground or the sandbox. And this is clearly already beginning to change as content itself is becoming commerce. So where do you think Pakistan is in terms of the complexities of, the back end, the format? I mean, Adam and Abrar saw both payment. And what do the recent changes where you see things like Facebook Shop and Instagram Shop and WhatsApp Business, what does this mean for both payments and shopping in Pakistan?
I think we still have a long way to go, because e-commerce industry is relatively new in Pakistan, but it is gradually picking up. When we talk about payments, because 95% of our customers are women, and with women, there are very few women who have their own credit card, so we have to give them that kind of comfort so that they can use their husbands credit cards and things like that. So once their experience is very good, because e-commerce is all about convenience, it's about speed, it's about design and technology, and in the end, the most important thing is the customer experience. So once the customers have good experience, they will gradually get comfortable with paying online. And even when we're talking about, we have recently collaborated with HPL and few other banks, so we actually saw our sales growing by magnitudes, because people were more comfortable, because they saw that a bank has already collaborated with an e-commerce website, so they kind of knew that it's safe to use your cards and things like that. And one thing we are really, really forgetting over here is the user generated content. When we talk about social media, like with the help of Facebook groups, few years down the road, we never people never used to sell their like second hand goods, like baby products and things like that. Like you're done with your child growing up, you need to sell off your products. So with the advent of Facebook group, it has become like massive. Like it's so easy for us to go on Facebook groups and start selling. And in the same way, like social shopping is a big growing trend, especially in our country also, with the help of social media influencers. How can we not talk about them, because they have really, really accelerated the growth. And for us also, they've really helped us, because when you give that 3D image to the customers. And when you have an interactive Facebook page and very very active Instagram page where your customers can actually see what the product really looks like, and when an influencer is giving a good review about it, and how to use, for example, what color of foundation will look good on you, and how to carry a bag and how to style an outfit. These are basic things. So these things have actually given that confidence to the customers, so that they want to buy more and more. And we've seen that with beauty and skincare and things like that. A lot of our youth now, they are on Netflix. They watch Netflix. Like, our times are over when we used to like wake up 7 o'clock in the morning for the morning shows and cartoons. Now the children, they're so well equipped, they can pause their thing anytime, they can come back in the evening. So those times have gone. So basically, all these people, all these children, and all this youth, which are the Netflix youth, eventually 20, 30 years, they will be so used to of shopping online that for them it's all about comfortable and getting comfortable in their own, like ordering online. It's about convenience. So I'm sure it has a long way to go. And e-commerce has a very very bright future in countries like Pakistan also, because the infrastructure, the algorithms, it keeps on improving. So like,
Yeah.
if you log on a website, they know what Mina really likes, so they will keep on showing me options. So I know what exactly I have to buy. I will save my time. I will check out. And even I'm in a meeting, I can order groceries online. Even for, I live in Dubai, I get my fuel. I mean, I have an app to order fuel online. It's just,
Yeah.
you just have to put your car number where you're located. A car will come, they will put fuel, you have to pay, and you're done. Even with groceries also. Even I order plants online. So I think we have a bright future with e-commerce.
I think the point that you made a little bit earlier about user-generated content, I think that's really interesting. And if you look at kind of the global conversation around that, that's talking about how this will overtake the brand, and the brand will no longer be supreme. So the kind of marketing the brand puts out may be overrun or almost flipped by what is going to be generated by independent users. Raza, what is your opinion about that, particularly with the rise of things like Facebook Shop? And I think WhatsApp Business is going to be particularly transformational.
I think I think a lot of this stuff is I think a lot of it's overhyped. I mean, at the end of the day, the only reason the influencer is pitching a certain product is because there's a certain product to be pitched, manufactured by a certain brand that paid them to do it, or is co-opting them in a certain way. So, the shift of power as such, I don't really buy it. At the end of the day, the dollar is what speaks. And the people making the most dollars typically are the brands. So yes, an influencer may be making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but I can guarantee you the product that she's pitching, the manufacturer of that product is making many, many times more money. So let's just assume it's another channel, right? There are two things I just want to touch upon really quickly. One is responsibility. Abrar Saab talked about it, that within the context of COVID, but I think there's a greater conversation we need to have, which is, where does a e-commerce seller's responsibility start and where does it end, right? Does it end at the time that you hand over the package to the courier, or does it end at the time when the recipient has received the package, confirmed that they like it, and they want to keep it, right? Are consumers not within their rights to change their minds? Are they not within their rights to return packages? Why do we hold this against consumers? Because they're just exercising very basic consumer rights. You wouldn't go into a store and just pick up a sealed bag and just assume that the thing that you wanted was inside there, right? Just because the retailer said so. You would want to exert your right to inspect the package. So I think these are things that, as e-commerce providers, we really need to think through, right? And I think the key element there when we think through this is that we need to think with a lens of empathy, right? Well, for a second, remove your hat as a reseller, remove your hat as a retailer, and think as a consumer. What reason have we given them to trust us, right? What reason, why should they trust us? Because we absolve ourselves as retailers or stakeholders of the responsibility the minute we hand the package over to the courier, right? What are we doing to allay those concerns? And I think the sooner we answer those questions, the better, we will be in a much better position to grow e-commerce in Pakistan.
So this kind of touches on a question that Misfaz just asked about how e-commerce businesses can protect customers from outright fraud, like a fake delivery which they have paid the Raza for, she says. How can the customers be sure that the business's internal controls are solid?
Look, I think one of the other things is fraud is not unique to Pakistan, right? Fraud exists everywhere else in the world. There are people who scam Amazon day in, day out as well. It's one of the parts of the cost of doing business. It unfortunately hits smaller business much more. But we have to figure out a way to price these things in. We have to figure out a way to price things like returns in as well, because that's the only way we'll get to a point where we're on par from a value proposition perspective with brick and mortar.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, this is to go specifically to that question a little bit more as well. As Raza said, this will happen regardless of the country you're in. I've had problems with Amazon myself where I've had a wrong item delivered. But the key difference comes is how focused are you on giving that right experience and then making it right. The customer will never blame you if you make a mistake. They'll only blame you if you make a mistake and then don't take proactive steps to actually fix that problem. That is the key to all of this. And we've talked we've talked a lot about trust. And whenever you ask anyone in Pakistan what's the problem with e-commerce in Pakistan, the core thing that comes out is trust. Trust is built by being consistent. So delivery after delivery after delivery, if you can show that you're consistent, you can deliver on time, and then if there are issues, solve it, your customers will automatically start to trust you and spread your name through word of mouth. So that's going to happen
I
regardless.
couldn't agree more. We're so quick to process returns and to refund. We don't even wait for banks. We just pay them out anyway because that's the easiest way to get a happy customer. There's a question here from Imran Azhar regarding any major changes that are coming, to any insights that you guys might have as insiders on a policy and regulatory level.
I think I can answer that. We are really looking ahead on artificial intelligence. I mean, like whenever we are trying to incorporate that, like whenever if you want to buy a foundation, because you're very much into beauty. So for beauty, you really have to know how a product looks like on your face. So developing an artificial intelligence type of thing, it's a very, very interactive where you can actually see how a lip color or how foundation or how a highlighter would look like on your face. So we're trying to incorporate that. I know it looks like a dream. It seems like very, very unreal kind of a thing, but I'm definitely sure it's not possible. And one more thing, which a lot of it is happening internationally, is like voice. Like you really have to say it. Instead of just going and typing it, you just have to go on the app and tell the app what you're looking for. For example, shoes. So it's going to show you all the options. So these things are definitely in the line, and I'm sure Pakistan is not behind from getting these things, getting more and more convenient for the customers and making it very, very easy for them.
Just to add a little more point to that is, so the Ministry of Commerce has been working on the e-commerce policy front for the last nearly 4 years, I believe. So there's an e-commerce policy that was passed, I believe, last year. It's available on the Ministry of Commerce website as well. And if there's a lot of people who are actually engaged with this very effectively within Pakistan. Pasha is actually one of the key players over here who's already helping out a lot. And there's been a lot of great work that's actually passed through. So just in the last 2 weeks, I believe the e-commerce exports was a policy that was going to pass through where up to $5,000 exports can happen from small retailers. And when Corona actually even started in March, very quickly, the people who were sort of involved with this helped create a policy for the logistics riders and what are the basic requirements needed to do e-commerce delivery so e-commerce deliveries could start as well. So there's a very active group on that. So Ministry of Commerce and Pasha is the best people to talk to if you want to get engaged.
So Amneh, to add to that, yes, there is a lot of work happening on the policy. About all exports.
Yes.
Whereas we've got a huge domestic market.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if it's me, but I think
on the policy level to address.
Okay, I think Abrar Saab's internet is lagging. So if there's something that anybody wants to add to this, or we can kind of take another question.
Look, I think there's
Yeah.
lots of work happening on payments, and the e-commerce policy has been around or under development for half a decade, which is only half the life of e-commerce in Pakistan. But I think what would be interesting to see is if we could implement or see some sort of movement around regulations of the COD business, specifically the courier business, and a understanding of shared responsibility along the value chain. I think if we can figure that out, sort out things like SLAs around holding payments, et cetera, not by the courier companies. These are issues you hear a lot about from companies large and small, and they need to be sort of resolved and addressed. And I'm not a big advocate for regulation, but this certainly sounds like one area where regulation could come in.
Okay. Usama Jamil is asking, how will e-commerce businesses help the job market, considering that almost 25,000 fresh graduates are entering the job market every year? I think that number might be actually understated. Does anybody think e-commerce might be the solution to our youth bulge?
I think there's a lot of benefit in it. So, one of the beauties of e-commerce is the fact that there's so many different areas that you're sort of interacting with if you sort of work for an e-commerce company. Tech, operations, marketing, customer service, all of these things. And this happens in a lot of areas. But, with e-commerce, they're very closely concentrated into a very small sort of sphere where you have to sort of manage all of this very carefully. And I think it can help, because if you look at the number of jobs that can be sort of created through e-commerce, whether it be through handling customer service requests, whether it be deliveries, whether it be doing logistics and fulfillment, elements like that, whether it be creating content, anything like that, there's a lot of opportunity sort of over there. Affiliate marketing is actually one of them as well, because in China, what you see is a lot of people, basically influencers, basically pushing products. So you have marketing, large brands, FMCGs and so on, basically pushing the products of affiliate marketers to push them out. So there's a lot of potential opportunity there to push products.
Yes, but this is also one area where there's going to be a shift from traditional business hiring to new, futuristic business hiring. So what you're going to see is that there will be, yes, absolutely more people employed on the e-commerce space, but that's going to have a resulting decrease in people who would, say, work in stores, or people who would work in restaurants, etc., because there you may see a lull or a shrinkage going forward. So if I look at our business, sure, we'll keep on adding stores, but the number of stores, say, we would add 10 years ago versus what we would need to do now is not going to be the same, right? So I do think that there will be a shift from traditional business hiring to maybe new sorts of business hiring. So at the net level, employment is still going to, I think, remain an issue in Pakistan unless we can figure out a way to solve our bigger GDP growth problem and figuring out who we are as a country and where we want to go as a country. The good thing is, I think we will see a lot more new entrepreneurs coming in, just because the barriers to entry on e-commerce are incredibly low. So in the space of 6 months of COVID, on my Facebook screen, like at least 10 new kids wear online brands have popped up, right? Because low barriers to entry, you just need to get a few products together, create a brand, boom, you're online. And I think that will lead to a lot more new, smaller entrepreneurs, and some of whom actually manage to scale it up and become big companies.
Oh, well, on that note, I'm being told there's just 2 minutes left. So any parting thoughts? What are you guys feeling about the future of e-commerce in the country? Do you think this is just a boom that we enjoyed during COVID, as Raza said, and people will rush back to the old normal, or are we headed for something new?
I just want to clarify, I didn't say that we will rush back. I think I said there's plenty of reason for people to rush back. And I am very bullish on e-commerce for what it's worth. I just feel that we need to find a form of e-commerce that truly solves for a lot of the problems, as opposed to just duplicating what's worked out in the West or what's worked out in the Far East.
I absolutely agree. I understand. I think your message was taper your excitement. Completely hear that. And do the work, which is absolutely true as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. This is a topic that's obviously very close to my own heart as well, and I've learned so very much. Huge thanks to the Nest for inviting everybody, and all the best. Have a great weekend.